Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler. Have you ever been subject to a scam on Revolut, or have you had other issues with the app from a fraud point of view? The scale of the banking app's usage here in Ireland is massive. It's around 2 million people. But that means that complaints about scams and fraud are really starting to filter through a lot more vocally. And there's quite a lot going on. A few days ago, our own personal finance editor, Charlie Weston, recounted several instances in the newspaper of readers who had been stung. Well, here to talk about it is Conor Flynn, security expert and Chief Information Security Officer at Waystone. Conor, just to put this in some context, here in Ireland, the Banking and Payments Federation say that fraudsters stole about €100 million through frauds and scams last year, but that was from customers of AIB, Bank of Ireland and Permanent TSB. It didn't include any fraudulent activity on Irish Revolut accounts. And many of the cases that we come across seem to be quite similar. They involve phone calls, for example. One of the ones we cited, or Charlie Weston cited in the newspaper, was about a pensioner who got in touch to say that she had been scammed out of €8,000 from her Revolut account after a phone call claimed to be from someone from Revolut. And many other examples I've seen recently, both in the Irish media and the UK media. There was one notable case the other month reported in The Guardian about someone who was scammed out of £40,000, once again, from somebody claiming to be from Revolut who phoned them. Are they typical examples?
Good afternoon, Adrian. Yes, unfortunately, they are quite typical. And I think in your introduction, it was very well put with regard to that survey carried out by the Banking and Payments Federation in Ireland. And one of the differences here is that Revolut, even though they offer Irish IBAN accounts, they're actually regulated from a financial services perspective in Lithuania and aren't a member bank of the BPFI, so their statistics wouldn't be included there.
Is that a meaningful difference? Should we consider that to be meaningful, that Revolut has always been primarily a Lithuania-based outfit? Does it functionally make any difference?
It doesn't really, from a regulatory perspective, from a controls perspective. The central banks throughout Europe, who are the responsible regulator within each country, are under the umbrella, the auspices of the ECB, and there is the European Central Bank. So there is a commonality of regulation, but there are slight variances across different regulators with regard to the depth that they go to. Some would say, particularly around the fintech side, Lithuania is recognized as being quite a strong regulator, particularly in the fintech sector. So I wouldn't say that there are weaknesses that are in the regulatory environment that are creating some of the fraud issues here.
Okay. Well, I've given a couple of examples, kind of phone-based examples. Are there any other kind of scams that customers of Revolut might happen across?
The typical attack on a Revolut customer is one of what we call social engineering. And whether it's that phone call method you described there, which is claiming to be someone from Revolut, or it's that a message that you might get that I regularly get myself saying, my daughter's phone has been stolen. She's looking for me to Revolut money to this number, and here's the ID for it, who is her friend. Will I do it so she can get a taxi or something like this? There are social engineering scams which are trying to get you to operate quickly and in a response to an emergency trigger of some sort, to use the little @ symbol for the Revolut another Revolut person to transfer money to, or to bank accounts. And one of the beauties of the Revolut app is the ease with which it allows you to transfer money within the Revolut community with the Revolut IDs, or very easily to transfer money to IBANs and to other accounts across the whole banking sector. Internationally, not just in Ireland.
And by the way, that's a feature, not a bug. I mean, we've been asking for functionality like that.
People want this, and it is a great facility. What has Possibly the adoption by so many people of the Revolut app has probably gone faster than people's awareness of how easy it is for them to transfer money accidentally or under coercion to somebody else. And I have friends, I have people who have accidentally put in an IBAN from a scammer and transferred money to them. And Revolut asks you to confirm, and it puts up strong messages with regard to once you put this IBAN in and you confirm the transaction, it is on you. It is your responsibility. We will do what you tell us, and that is probably the ease with which it can be done, even with notwithstanding those messages, is quite different to our traditional online banking applications. I would be a banking customer with one of the pillar banks myself, and if you go to add a new IBAN or a new account on them to transfer money to an unknown account, there is a slightly more cumbersome process with more overhead, and that is what people are used to. So it brings in maybe subconscious controls that people aren't used to today, that are familiar with rather today, that wouldn't be there in the app. So
I think Revolut takes a hard line in some instances. I've brought up a few examples involving phone calls. Now, in all of those examples, the evidence that I have seen where Revolut has responded, and it has told me this also, is that where you are scammed when somebody rings you out of the blue and coaxes you somehow to give over your Revolut details for them to then, empty your bank account, they tend not to be that sympathetic to that, and they won't reimburse your money. Now, that maybe culturally that's a different departure for us here in Ireland, because we've always had, as long as the internet's been around, a lot of our pillar banks have kind of had a softer attitude toward that. I don't know whether that's the case specifically with phone-based fraud, but certainly in general with internet-related fraud, there's always a bit of a shot that Bank of Ireland or AIB or Permanent TSB will actually cover you. In the UK, there's this thing called the Contingent Reimbursement Model Code. I was reading about this earlier on, and effectively what that is a banking code that essentially will give you some succor unless you have been, quote unquote, unduly negligent. And Revolut doesn't sign up to that. They take a harder line, and they kind of take the view, it seems, that you're an adult. If you are transferring money somewhere, or if someone rings you up on the phone and says they're from Revolut, that's kind of on you.
And that is very much the case of the frauds and the evidence I would have from people who have reported it to us, who have asked us to potentially investigate whether or not there are technical issues that maybe a forensic investigation might uncover, or anecdotally from friends, unfortunately, and wider community members that I know who have suffered fraud on the app. And the majority of the time, and I would say, in fact, the absolute vast majority of the time, it is the basis. It is presupposed upon social engineering. It is not the app's fault. It is not a technology failure. It is not an authentication failure. It's not a systems failure. It is a manipulation of the person. And as you've eloquently outlined, it's the ease of use of the app has multiplied the likely outcome for the scammer, because it can happen quickly.
So
you don't have time to think about it.
Yeah. So look, that being the case, and let's take it that we understand that and that we accept those as the parameters. Should we really be thinking twice then about using Revolut as a main current account? Because if we accept that we are going to be more vulnerable to this social engineering and that it is more difficult, and I say that, by the way, without evidence. I don't know whether it's more difficult or easier to scam money out of us than it is from the pillar banks, because we do have that 100 million euro figure, which is a lot of money. We don't know whether it's more or less in Revolut. But if everything is going to be quicker, more instant, and if we are likely to be susceptible, maybe we shouldn't be using Revolut as a main banking account as it wants us to do. Maybe we should just use it for smaller sums.
And this comes down to the convenience factor. I still have main banking with my pillar bank, But I have
But can I ask, is that because you have kind of a legacy mortgage and other stuff? Like, why would you still have that? Are you saying that you retain that Pillar Bank account as a primary account partly because of these factors, or is there some other reason?
Partly, I think that there's a comfort from a governance and a process perspective that I've built up over the years. Not as good as it was, but I have access to my manager in a branch locally. And I think that that is a big part of...
Wow, you must be one of the privileged few.
Well, at least you can go in and, there is this, ease, I think, of, and you referred to it a little while ago, is that the principles upon which the pillar banks, or the community banks, if you want to call them that even, that the action that when they would typically refund or make good in some way people who have become victims of scams, and we've seen it with the romance scams and other types, that when these sort of events have occurred, that there has been that slightly softer, more community-focused approach towards dealing with particularly vulnerable, elderly, or others who have been caught like this. So that is, in the background as well for me. One of the things that drove a lot of my Revolut usage, and I am a heavy Revolut user, is my teenage children. It is an absolutely fantastic way of managing, transferring money backwards and forwards between them, managing, showing them how to spend and everything. And it is far more advanced in that area from a family perspective than I think the other banking platforms are.
Yeah, 9 p.m. on a Friday evening. Dad, can you Revolut me? We've all been there.
But it does allow you to help them manage and use money as well, and you can see transactions that they are committing, and there is that little bit of parental oversight, which is really good on the Revolut piece.
Yeah, you mentioned the scam that involves a text message saying, "Hi mom, hi dad, I'm stranded. Can you send me money? Here's my new details. Here's my new mobile number." That's kind of garden variety. I think a lot of people are used to that one by now. I'm interested in maybe some of the others that are common. I know somebody who recently fell prey to the particular scam when there's a problem with your airline or your travel arrangements, and you post about it maybe on X, maybe somewhere else, and quick as a shot, someone's in your reply saying, "Hi, couldn't help but notice you were complaining about this. I'm from the customer service. Do you want a DM?" And you get into a DM conversation, and you're so flustered and you're so anxious that you might then give them details, and I know somebody who got scammed out of several €100 that way. What other creative scams are going around at the moment?
I think that's a very good example. We've seen them with restaurant booking systems that people have posted that I'm going. Again, it's a lot of it starts with, where do you divulge information? So for lots of social reasons, I think we overshare today. I post on Instagram, or I post on Facebook or Snapchat that I'm going into this restaurant, I'm going to the cinema, I'm on this cruise liner, or various other activities. And that is a very valid hunting ground for the scammers to start with. And this is not new. 20 years ago, we would have been having the same conversation about people whose houses were broken into because they posted photos on a photo site of their 2-week holiday away. And so that's the start of it. So, but coming back to your question,
by the way, I've always found that particular piece of advice to be a little bit awkward and hard to implement. Never post a photo of where you are on holiday, because then burglars might target your house. I mean, you might as well never leave the house,
No, but I think it's never it's not that you never post, but never post to the whole world.
Yeah.
So who are you advertising? Who are you? Like, if you're an influencer, you've got a very different reason for wanting to post to anybody. An ordinary citizen may decide, well, actually, I'll post pictures to my friend groups, or to people who I'm happy to share that information with. So it's not that you don't post, and it's not you don't post to your friends, but just be careful about the widespread part of it. Or if you're posting that you're on holidays, don't say I'm starting my 2 weeks. Say I'm on holiday, but you might be coming home today, or you might be starting a holiday today. But
My God, we're really paranoid middle-aged men, aren't we?
well, I don't like break-ins. But it is part of that information gathering, because all of these scams we talk about, and it goes back to the BPFI article. A lot of this wasn't to do with banking at all in terms of the systems. It was confidence tricksters. It was the age-old thing of manipulating the emotions of a person, the targeting of people through dating apps, for romance scams. There's so many ways that the confidence tricksters, and I say this goes back hundreds of years in terms of the approach. The scam apps, using scams using Revolut or other apps today, are just another tool in the confidence tricksters.
Okay, so let me ask you specifically about Revolut. Let's take it that you and I both have Revolut apps. Let's take it that the majority of the people listening to or watching this podcast have a Revolut app and a Revolut account. What do you think they should do? What are the steps they should be taking, they should be mindful of?
So one of the things that's quite useful is actually you can create a vault in Revolut. So if you are lucky enough to be somebody who has deposit money, not just your salary comes in and goes out in the space of a month on bills, but if you have money that builds up over time, even if it's only hundreds or a couple of €1,000, you have the ability to create a vault, and you can say, well, I can't access, it takes me a day to unlock it, or 2 days. But that is preventable. Once you've done that, it means that it's locked away. You can't easily respond or get tricked into doing something with that balance that you have. I think it's things like your lock code that you use within the app. It's about being smart about the lock codes that you use there. If you're going to look for help, or if you're going to respond to anything that is purporting to come from Revolut, don't take a phone call, don't take a text message. Use the in-app chat functionality. At least when you're using if you think of the app on your phone, it is a walled garden. It is protected with the security features of the phone and the app from the developers. And what happens within that, if you don't permit it, it won't happen from a security or a fraud perspective. So if you want to have a chat with Revolut, you want to make a complaint, you want to check something, the chat feature is definitely the best.
Do you know the issue that I have with banks in general, which give out advice like that? And Revolut is better than most, but I get emails from Revolut as well. I get emails with clickable links. That doesn't mean it's telling me to go and execute some money transfer, but it does mean that it's an official communication outside of the app that I'm getting from Revolut with a clickable link. And that immediately starts to plant in my head that there might be a way of dealing with Revolut outside the app, via email, via a clickable link, because it's doing so with me. The pillar banks are even worse. The pillar banks send out, because I have an account with our pillar bank, and they send out emails with clickable links, sometimes for executable specific purposes, like a marketing survey or something else, or a link back into some other part of their infrastructure. So it would be so nice if the banks, including Revolut, were able to stick to one clearly defined set of operational controls for the customers, wouldn't it?
I absolutely agree with you, and I think this is where the tension probably within the organizations rises between the marketing, the sales, the product development side, who want to communicate on every channel, in every method, get sticky with the customers, get lots of interaction and flow with them. And then the security and the regulatory and the compliance side, who are saying, we must use the app channel, we must use what is a secure, controlled, managed environment where nobody else can interject into the comms. And that tension that exists within the banks, or within any institution who's got these sort of decisions to make. Unfortunately, we see too often the desire to communicate and manage and own more of the customer interaction through email channels, web channels, things like that, winning. And really, once you have a customer, you should stick to the secure app channel as being the one that is trusted. And then you can very clearly say in a message, exactly to your point, we will never send you a link to click on via email. And if you can say that in your security and compliance page on your website or in anything that people sign up to or in the apps, I think you're winning a huge part of the battle with regard to the susceptibility of normal persons to these kind of confidence trickster scams.
What's the worst case of fraud or scam you've come across in the context of the conversation we've been having?
So it was a non-app based one, but there's somebody I came across recently who had helped them with an investigation, and they had sold a company and they had a couple of €100,000, a very unique circumstance. And they did a Google search for best short-term deposit rate in Ireland. And there was a paid for Google search entry at the top of it with a domain name that looked like something, internet search advice for investors. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was very professional looking and it was a sponsored web. He went into this site and it was really slick and it profiled loads of different investment opportunities, return rates and all of these things. Selected one and said somebody will be in contact. Then they had registered a false domain for a European bank and created a domain name based on .ie for that domain, and set up a mail service and set up an organizational structure with different mail accounts. And compliance people from that organization had all the branding and everything, sent this man an email with these investment forms, PDFs to be completed. He completed them all, was back and forth, and somebody from their regulatory side contacted him to confirm before he did anything. So it all looked really good from a process perspective. And he transferred 2 tranches of €100,000 to this entity, and it was an IBAN for that looked the exact same as the header of a real IBAN in Ireland for this European bank, and the money was gone in minutes.
Wow.
And I have never seen the complexity and the planning. Like, they had a really professional looking website, and they had real live data feeds of interest rates and returns and everything on their website. And the link off then to have these false domain created, regulatory and compliance people working and sending emails with forms that looked perfectly aligned with what would be the official ones of that organization. It was absolutely frighteningly brilliant. But that's, when you talk about the BPFI and their 100 million
did they get it back?
No, it was gone. So it happened on a Friday afternoon, and they contacted their pillar bank, who they'd done the transfer from. And by the time somebody got back to them, it was too late. It took a couple of hours for somebody to come back to them, but the money was gone.
Wow. Okay. Well, that puts some of the lesser, more simplistic scams that we've been talking about into context. But they are no less important for people who are potentially affected by those. And I think that both of us would urge the banking system maybe to tighten up and streamline their user controls a little bit better. For the moment, Conor Flynn, Chief Information Security Officer at Waystone, thank you very much, as always, for joining us and explaining a few things about how to use your Revolut account properly. John Smith was on the audio for this podcast, and JJ Clark produced it. I'm Adrian Weckler, and we'll talk to you soon.